Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Storyriem. I'm so happy you're here with me today. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders relax, clear your mind, and let this story carry you back through time to a world of magnificent palaces, powerful rulers, dangerous secrets, and one extraordinary woman whose life changed an empire forever. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a small village in Eastern Europe around the year 1520. The homes are simple, built from wood and rough stone. A tiny church stands in the center, its bell echoing softly across the fields. Golden wheat sways in the breeze beneath distant mountains. Life here is peaceful. Families work the land, pray together, and dream of a quiet future. Among them lives a young girl, no older than 15 or 16. She has bright red hair and a quick, curious mind. She is clever. Far more clever than most people realize. But what everyone notices first is her laughter. It comes easily. It fills every room with warmth. Wherever she goes, she brings a little light with her. Then one ordinary morning, everything changes. Horsemen appear on the horizon. They ride in from the east, across the vast grasslands near the Black Sea. They are Crimean Tatars, feared raiders who attack villages, capture innocent people, and sell them into slavery. Panic spreads through the village. Some people run. Some hide. Some fight. But there are simply too many horsemen. The young girl is torn away from her home, separated from her family, and forced into a line of captives. Bound with ropes, she begins a heartbreaking journey alongside men, women, and children who have lost everything. They travel hundreds of kilometers through dust, bitter cold, hunger, and fear. Eventually, they arrive at a slave market in Crimea, where human beings are bought and sold like livestock. There, the girl is purchased by a merchant and placed on another long journey, this time across the Black Sea, toward the greatest city of its age, Istanbul. She has no idea that she will never see her village again. She has no idea that one day she will become the most powerful woman in the Ottoman Empire. She has no idea that she will rewrite traditions that had remained unchanged for nearly 2 centuries. History remembers her by one name, Hurrem Sultan. Stay with me, because this is far more than the story of a queen. It is the story of a frightened young girl who lost everything, refused to lose herself, and found a voice powerful enough to change the course of an empire. To understand just how remarkable Hurrem's journey was, we first need to understand the world she entered. In the early 16th century, the Ottoman Empire stood at the height of its power. It stretched from the gates of Vienna in Europe to the deserts of Arabia, from the shores of North Africa to the mountains of Persia. Its armies defeated kingdoms that others feared to challenge, while its navy ruled the Mediterranean Sea. At the heart of this vast empire stood Istanbul, once known as Constantinople. With more than 500,000 people, it was larger than Paris, London, and Rome combined. Its magnificent mosques reached toward the heavens, while its bustling markets overflowed with silk, spices, precious jewels, and gold brought from every corner of the known world. To many people, it was the very center of civilization. And at the center of that civilization sat one man, the Sultan. In 1520, a young ruler had just inherited the throne. His name was Suleiman, and he was only 25 years old. History would remember him as Suleiman the Magnificent, one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known. During his reign, the Ottoman Empire reached the peak of its strength. He expanded its borders farther than any sultan before him. His legal reforms were so influential that his own people called him Kanuni, meaning the lawgiver. Yet he was much more than a conqueror. He was also a gifted poet who wrote beautiful verses about love and longing under a secret pen name. Warrior, statesman, poet, architect, Suleiman seemed to embody every quality of a great ruler. He lived inside the magnificent Topkapi Palace, an enormous complex of gardens, marble courtyards, fountains, and elegant halls overlooking the waters where Europe and Asia meet. Hidden within those palace walls was a place known as the harem. Today, that word is often misunderstood. Many films and novels have turned it into fantasy, But the real Ottoman harem was something very different. It was the Sultan's private household, a carefully organized institution with its own traditions, teachers, and hierarchy. Hundreds of women lived there. Some served the palace. Others received an exceptional education in languages, music, poetry, literature, and court etiquette. The most talented among them could rise to positions of remarkable influence. In many ways, the harem was both a school and a political court. And it was here that the frightened girl from the small village finally arrived. She was still only a teenager. She knew no one. She could not speak a single word of Turkish. Around her were hundreds of women who already understood the palace, its customs, and its unwritten rules. She was a complete stranger. She stood at the very bottom of a world unlike anything she had ever imagined. But there was one thing no one could steal from her. Not the horsemen, not the chains, not the journey across the sea, not even slavery itself. Her spirit. The Ottomans gave the young girl a new name. They called her Hurrem, a Turkish name that means the cheerful one or the one who laughs. Think about how extraordinary that is. She had been torn away from her family, forced to leave her home, and carried across hundreds of miles in chains. She had lost everything she had ever known. Yet somehow, she did not lose herself. She still smiled.
She still laughed.
She still brought warmth wherever she went. It was as if no hardship could extinguish the light inside her. Can you imagine having that kind of strength? Most people would have become quiet, fearful, and invisible. They would have let sorrow define them. But Hurrem refused to do that. Instead, she chose to grow. She learned Turkish with remarkable speed. She learned to read and write. She immersed herself in poetry, music, and the traditions of the Ottoman court. Historical records tell us she was not the most beautiful woman in the harem, but they also tell us something far more important. She possessed an extraordinary mind.
She was clever, quick-witted, and endlessly curious. She could make people laugh, and she could hold intelligent conversations with everyone, from palace servants to respected scholars. Among hundreds of women living inside the harem, it was not her beauty that made her stand out. It was her intelligence, her confidence, and the spark in her personality. Before long, that spark caught the attention of the most powerful man in the world. Sultan Suleiman noticed her, not simply because she was charming, but because she challenged him intellectually. He enjoyed talking with her. They spent hours discussing poetry, philosophy, and the challenges of ruling an empire that stretched across 3 continents. He trusted her enough to share his fears about war, politics, and leadership. Hurrem listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and offered ideas of her own. She never treated him like a distant ruler sitting high above everyone else. She spoke to him as one human being speaking honestly to another. Slowly, something happened that had never happened before in Ottoman history. The Sultan fell deeply in love. That alone was extraordinary. Ottoman tradition was very clear. A concubine was expected to bear the Sultan one son, and then leave the palace forever, raising that child in a distant province. She would never return to court. No woman remained beside the Sultan for life, and certainly no woman became his wife. Those were rules that had stood for generations. But Hurrem changed all of them. After giving birth to a son, she did not leave the palace. She remained beside Suleiman. Together, they had 6 children, 5 sons and 1 daughter, and year after year their relationship only grew stronger. Then, sometime around 1533 or 1534, Suleiman made a decision that sent shockwaves across the empire. He granted Hurrem her freedom and then married her. It was an astonishing moment in Ottoman history. Under Islamic law, a sultan could not marry a slave, so he first released her from slavery. For the first time in many years, Hurrem stood not as someone's property, but as a free woman. Then, by her own choice, she married the man who had set her free. It was more than a royal wedding. It was a breaking of a 200-year-old tradition. The news spread quickly throughout the empire and beyond. The royal court was stunned. Foreign ambassadors hurried to send reports home describing the unbelievable event. A Venetian diplomat wrote about it with open amazement. Throughout Istanbul, people could talk about little else. Some admired the Sultan's decision. Others strongly opposed it. But everyone understood that history had changed. The frightened village girl who had once been sold in a slave market had become a Siki Sultan, the legal wife of the Ottoman ruler, and the most powerful woman in the empire. Yet Hurrem did not use that power simply to enjoy a life of luxury. She became one of Suleiman's closest and most trusted advisors. She read reports from distant provinces, discussed military campaigns, and exchanged letters with foreign rulers, including the King of Poland and the King of France. At a time when women in the Ottoman court were expected to remain silent and unseen, Hurrem became an influential voice in diplomacy and politics. More importantly, she believed that true power should improve the lives of ordinary people. Across Istanbul, she funded schools, hospitals, mosques, public baths, fountains, and soup kitchens that fed hundreds of poor families every day. She also helped ransom prisoners of war, giving many people a chance to return home to their loved ones. Her generosity reached beyond the capital, supporting charitable works in the holy cities of Mecca and Jerusalem. Wherever Hurrem saw suffering, she tried to ease it. But every great rise creates powerful enemies, and Hurrem's story was no exception. The Ottoman court was filled with ambition, jealousy, and political intrigue. Her greatest rival was Divrin, another woman of the harem, and the mother of Suleiman's eldest son, Prince Mustafa. By long-standing tradition, Mustafa was expected to inherit the throne. He was respected by the army, admired by the people, and widely seen as the future sultan. Yet Hurrem's own sons also had claims to the empire. Under Ottoman law, there could be only one ruler. When a new sultan took the throne, his brothers, and sometimes their families, often faced execution to prevent future civil wars. It was a brutal system, but it was a reality of Ottoman succession. Hurrem understood that if Prince Mustafa became sultan, the lives of her own sons could be in terrible danger. In the world she lived in, the struggle for survival was not only personal, it was political, and the stakes could not have been higher. In 1553, the Ottoman Empire witnessed one of the darkest moments in its history. Sultan Suleiman ordered the execution of his eldest son, Prince Mustafa. The young prince was put to death with a silk cord, the traditional method of royal execution, because Ottoman law forbade the shedding of royal blood. News of his death spread quickly across the empire, and people were heartbroken. Mustafa had been admired by soldiers, respected by the people, and widely believed to be the future sultan. Before long, whispers began to fill the palace halls. Many believed that Hurrem had persuaded Suleiman to make this terrible decision. But did she? The truth is, no one knows for certain. Historians have debated the question for centuries, and nearly 500 years later, the mystery still remains. That is what makes Hurrem's story so fascinating, and so difficult to judge. She was intelligent, compassionate, and remarkably resilient. Yet she also lived in a world where kindness alone was not enough to survive. The Ottoman system forced families into impossible choices. She did not create its brutal rules, but she had to live within them. She knew that if Prince Mustafa became sultan, her own sons might not survive. In a world where power often meant life or death, every decision carried an unimaginable cost. Hurrem Sultan died in April 1558, most likely in her mid-50s. No one knows exactly what caused her death, although many historians believe she had been suffering from a long illness. Her passing left a silence that echoed throughout the palace. But no one felt that loss more deeply than Suleiman, the great conqueror. The ruler who had defeated powerful kingdoms and commanded vast armies was overcome with grief. For nearly 40 years, Hurrem had been his companion, his confidant, and the love of his life. After she was gone, he poured his sorrow into poetry. In one of his most famous verses, he called her, "My springtime, my cheerful face, love, my daytime, my sweetheart, my laughing leaf, my everything." Those words reveal a side of Suleiman that history books rarely show, a man whose greatest victory was not won on a battlefield, but found in love. To honor her memory, Suleiman built a magnificent tomb for Hurrem beside the Suleimani Mosque, the masterpiece of his reign, and the grandest mosque in the Ottoman Empire. Among all the places where she could have been laid to rest, he chose the one closest to his own heart. Even after death, he wanted the woman he loved to remain by his side. Suleiman continued to rule for another 8 years, leading new military campaigns and expanding his empire even further. But those who knew him said he was never quite the same again. The joy that had once filled his life seemed to disappear with Hurrem. Then, in 1566, while leading an army during a campaign in Hungary, Suleiman died at the age of 71. His body was returned to Istanbul, where he was buried near Hurrem. Side by side, the mighty sultan and the village girl who had once arrived as a slave found their final resting place together. A remarkable ending to one of history's most extraordinary love stories. After Suleiman's death, Hurrem's son, Selim II, became the next sultan. Yet Hurrem's influence did not end with her passing. In many ways, it was only beginning. The years that followed became known as the Sultanate of Women, a remarkable period when the mothers and wives of Ottoman sultans played powerful roles in shaping the empire's politics. Hurrem had opened a door that remained open for more than 100 years. She proved that influence did not always come from swords, armies, or crowns. Sometimes it came from intelligence, patience, courage, and the ability to speak with wisdom. Today, Hurrem Sultan remains one of the most famous women in Turkish history and one of the most fascinating figures in the world. Her life has inspired novels, paintings, operas, films, and the internationally acclaimed television series Magnificent Century, which introduced her story to millions of viewers in more than 50 countries. Her portrait has appeared on postage stamps. Books about her have been translated into dozens of languages. Every year, countless visitors walk to the peaceful courtyards of the Suleimani Mosque in Istanbul and stand before her beautifully carved tomb. As they do, many try to imagine the incredible journey of a young girl taken from a small wooden house in Eastern Europe, who eventually came to rest beside one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known. It almost sounds like a legend, but it is history. And it all began because one young girl refused to let the worst day of her life decide the rest of her future. So, my friend, our journey through Hurrem Sultan's remarkable life comes gently to an end. Hurrem could not choose where she was born. She could not stop the horsemen who rode into her village. She could not break the chains that carried her across the sea. But she refused to let those moments define her. She learned. She adapted. She found her voice. And when the opportunity finally came, she used that voice to leave a mark on one of the greatest empires in history. And perhaps that is why her story still matters today. Because in many ways, you are on your own journey as well. Learning English can sometimes feel like stepping into a foreign world where nothing makes sense. Some days, every word feels difficult. Some days, you wonder if you'll ever become confident. But remember this: every new word you learn, every sentence you practice, and every mistake you overcome is another step forward. Little by little, you are building something that no one can ever take away from you. Hurrem arrived in a strange world with nothing except her determination, her intelligence, and her voice. You already have those same gifts. Keep speaking. Keep learning. Keep believing in yourself. Because every great journey begins with a single step. This is Storyriem. Now I'd love to hear from you. What part of Hurrem Sultan's story surprised you the most? Was it her incredible rise from slavery to becoming the Sultan's wife? Was it the love story that changed centuries of tradition? Or was it the lasting influence she left on one of history's greatest empires? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I always enjoy reading what you have to say. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. There are many more incredible stories waiting for you here on Storyriem, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay curious, and never stop learning.